Samsung has just decided to take on Apple in a category that nobody else wanted to touch. Now, for a long time, Apple has made premium displays that so many Mac users and even some Windows users have loved because of not only the design, but the build quality and the looks along with the specs. We waited for an affordable monitor from Apple for many years, especially after Apple discontinued their super popular Thunderbolt display. But then when one came out, it cost $5,000 and had a $1,000 stand, which was a really nice display, but at $6,000, almost nobody can afford it. And then a few years later, after many rumors of having a nice mini LED 27-inch display, Apple released the Studio Display, which was still expensive at $1,600, but it did not have mini LED. It was a regular 5K LCD display, which was still nice and it was an upgrade from the LG 5K, but the quality was very similar. The main difference was the design, the fact that it is made by Apple, made out of aluminum. It has a great stand, doesn't wobble like crazy like the LG 5K, and it had a better webcam supposedly. Now, we actually really like that display. Our main editor, Angelica, uses it paired to the Mac Studio, and those things came out at the same time. And we use it just because it is nice and it ties in well with the ecosystem, and mainly because it is a 5K display where most of the competition still makes 4K displays. And for video editing, that 5K is really nice. Now, it does have that A13 built into it, but unfortunately, Apple really didn't take advantage of it. And you have other competitors now that are starting to make unique displays. For example, Samsung, once again, we made a video on the M8 that was about half the price of the Studio Display, but had so many more features. And I absolutely loved it. I gave it a great review, but it was still 4K. But now Samsung has just announced this competitor that literally looks like a knockoff of the display, and it is a 27-inch 5K display that has some really great features that might be a Studio Display killer, and I'll explain exactly why. This thing is called the Viewfinity S9. If you take a look, you might even get confused for the Studio Display because they look so similar. Now, the bezels here, they are actually slimmer than the Studio Display, and you'll notice a webcam right at the top, which I think is going to be killer. But first, one thing that really stands out other than the resolution is the fact that it is 99% DCI-P3, the same exact color accuracy as the Studio Display. Now, not only that, it has built-in color calibration, which is excellent for people doing photo editing, video editing, has a low delta E, and it has USB and Thunderbolt 4. Now, one of the issues that the Studio Display has is the fact that it only has Thunderbolt and there's not even a power button. It turns on when it connects and it's mostly using software. Now, this thing has a display port and an HDMI built in as well. So with the Studio Display, you're spending $1,600, but you are limited because you can't use that with everything. So Samsung's Viewfinity S9, as they're calling it, is a lot more flexible. Now, along with that, not only does it have this kind of similar design, but it is also built out of aluminum, including the stand. That is where most companies don't want to go. It costs a lot more money, takes more time to do that. So everybody uses plastic, and people love Apple's displays because the build quality is great, the stand is great, doesn't wobble around. Well, now we have another kind of luxury display option that is made out of aluminum. Now, the Studio Display has a good webcam like they showed off on stage, but when people actually got it and started using it, it looked pretty terrible. So much so that Apple had to address it, saying that there are software issues for that 1080p webcam and put out an update. Now, we actually tested out the update, we got the beta software, and it did make it a little bit better, but it was still pretty bad. And we showed off a third-party piece of software that allowed you to use your iPhone in order to use that instead of the webcam and get much better quality. The difference was massive, and Apple actually went ahead and copied that app and they built that right into macOS, so you don't have to use their 1080p webcam. Well, this Samsung actually includes a 4K webcam instead of 1080p, and it also can crop in and track you just like Apple software, so that is a copy. Now, there's no images from that 4K, but I assume it's gonna look quite a bit better, and it is also going to be detachable just like on the Samsung M8, so you can pop it off if you want for privacy, if you don't want anybody to be able to turn that on remotely, if you care a lot about that. Now, another issue with most monitors on the market is that they are advertised as having HDR, but a lot of them only hit 350 nits, 400 nits, whereas the Studio Display went from 500 up to 600, so that was an improvement, and the HDR looked pretty good for an LCD display. Now, this Samsung also hits 600 nits for HDR, so it's another copy, and I wonder if there's a chance that the actual LCD panel that is in that Samsung could be the same exact panel in the Studio Display. That is definitely a possibility. Now, with the Studio Display, one thing a lot of people complained about is that the stand that it comes with, it is not really adjustable. The $1,600 model only has tilt, and that is it. Now, if you want to have height adjustment, you have to spend $2,000 to upgrade that in order to have a stand that is similar to the 6K XDR display and to be able to raise it higher, because from the factory it is somewhat low for most people. Well, this Samsung display actually has that built in, and you can also rotate the display, and they have an image of that. Now, the one thing that I am concerned about is that the Samsung is a matte display. Now, their images make it look glossy, so I don't know what exactly they're doing, but on the Studio Display, you actually have to pay extra, another $300 to get Apple's Nano texture, which is a little bit matte, but not as bad as most displays to reduce reflectivity, but the Samsung is already matte. So we're gonna have to check it out, and we will do a comparison to see how well that display does, and if the matte makes the detail go down a lot like it does on most displays. Now, what we do not know is the price tag. It's gonna come early this year, but we have no pricing, so we don't know what it's gonna be at. Now, I know it's not gonna be cheap, but I highly doubt it's gonna be $1,600 either. So my guess is it will be cheaper and with more features built in. And along with all of these things, it's also gonna run their Tizen OS. So just like the M8, you're gonna be able to use a bunch of different smart apps, streaming services without even having any computer or anything connected to it, which I think is a killer feature. And all displays should have that if they have a good processor, which this one will have one that's good enough. And unfortunately, the Studio Display, even though it has an A13 built in with 64 gigabytes of storage built in, well, Apple's not allowing you to use anything like that. It doesn't have Apple TV built in or anything else, so they are limiting it compared to this Samsung. So it's gonna be interesting to see what this comes out price-wise. I think it's gonna be a great display. You guys let me know your thoughts. Are you okay with them pretty much copying it, but making it better with having more inputs, having a better webcam, more features out of the box, like with the stand? Is this something you'd want to buy instead of the Studio Display if you own a Mac and you typically buy Apple products? I think for a lot of you guys, this might make a whole ton of sense, especially if it has the same display. Now, if you're gonna buy a 5K Studio Display from Apple, check out the YouTube shopping feature where you can go ahead and check that out and pick one of those up, and click above to subscribe if you guys want to see our comparison with the Samsung as soon as it comes out against the Apple Studio Display. Check out one of those great videos right over there. This has been Max, and I'll see you in the next one.